Rise on a matter of privilege. With a matter of privilege, it's important that the matter be raised at the earliest possible opportunity and that the matter represents a prima facie case of privilege. The matter I'm concerned about arises from the statements made by the MLA for Thompson on Thursday afternoon when he said in the legislature, and I quote, "We're probably the most dysfunctional legislature in Canada, probably one of the most dysfunctional legislatures in the Commonwealth. I probably would say probably the most dysfunctional legislatures in the world." End of quote. Mr. Speaker, I wanted to review Hansard to be sure of exactly what was said before raising this. This is a common practice, Mr. Speaker, with matters of privilege because we're dealing with a very serious issue, and it's very important that the facts on which the matter of privilege are raised are accurate. As regards to the issue of whether this is a prima facie case of privilege, Mr. Speaker, when a member of this legislature stands in this chamber and uses some of the most derogatory language possible to describe our Manitoba legislature, then I believe this is the case where the member in question is impugning all members of the chamber and putting the blame not only on all MLAs in this chamber, including the Speaker, but also misrepresenting the high quality of work done by employees of the legislature and the staff of the MLAs, as well as the MLAs. I shall go into more detail, Mr. Speaker, because this is a very serious matter. In reviewing the words from the MLA for Thompson, I understand that to make such statements on record, he must have meant what he said. My reading of what his words are is that they represent a very serious slur on the reputation of our Assembly. The member statements were and are derogatory toward our Assembly and toward those who are employed here, toward our caucus and all caucuses, MLA staff, and toward all MLAs. These remarks by the MLA for Thompson were and are a very serious slur on the reputation of our legislature, and I believe they must be taken very seriously. The comments of the MLA for Thompson were directed in particular at the legislature session calendar. Mr. Speaker, I was involved in discussions which led to the agreement of the rules for the sessional calendar, which were voted on and approved December 4th, 2002. Mr. Speaker, the problem lays not with the rules themselves, but in the way that today's NDP have completely disregarded the intent of the rules. The intent of the rules was to provide an organized way to wind up debate in the legislature by the middle of June to facilitate an organized session which would not drag on into July and August. The intent was to provide the government with an end date for the session so that the government could plan the session appropriately by starting earlier in the year. The intent was to ensure that the work of the legislature would either be completed by mid-June or, if not completed, could be recommenced and completed starting in early September to be completed in the fall. The problem is not the rules, Mr. Speaker. The problem has been that today's NDP misused the rules by starting later and later instead of following the intent to start session earlier in the year. The current year is an excellent example of this, for today's NDP government did not start the session until April 30th. The result of their inattention to the business of the House is that it's impossible to complete the proper business of the House by mid-June, and today's NDP finds itself in a most disorganized state. I want to make clear that when the member for Thompson spoke about Manitoba being one of the most dysfunctional legislatures in the world, I would hope that he was not referring to the character and the nature of all members. I would hope that he was not referring to the character and nature of the clerk and the staff of the clerk's office. I would hope that he was not referring to the Speaker and the Speaker's office. I would also hope he was not referring to any of the opposition members who were all kept waiting for this sitting to begin, while today's NDP were internally focused on their own caucus instead of the business of Manitoba. The MLA for Thompson should have been only referring to the complete and full dysfunction of the present Premier and his cabinet, and he should have made this explicit in the statement instead of implying that others were disorganized. Mr. Speaker, I will explain my last statement. The rules have worked well in the past when the government has been ready to talk to members of the opposition parties and involve opposition parties in determining some aspects of the timing of the legislative session. This has hardly happened under the present Premier, and this last year is an example. The first time there was a proposal put forward by the Government House Leader for this session, a session which started with barely enough sitting days to debate only the throne speech this last December, was on Thursday, June the 4th. This is strange, to say the least, for a House Leader to wait until almost the very end of the sitting days planned for this spring. In fact, for this entire short session to even start talking about plans for the whole session schedule. It appears that today's NDP has grown old, tired, arrogant, and will not listen to talk or talk to others about planning for sessional timing, which involves all MLAs and all those who work for and on behalf of the legislature, and in a broader sense, many who work in a variety of different capacities for the government of our province. It's no wonder that the MLA for Thompson talked about dysfunction. But, Mr. Speaker, the dysfunction is not the dysfunction of the members of the opposition parties, nor the dysfunction of the valued staff of our Legislative Assembly. It is the dysfunction of today's NDP government. Mr. Speaker, in rising on this matter of privilege, I would ask that the member for Thompson withdraw his remarks as they pertain to our legislature and have his remarks, as they were said, restricted to the actions of his own NDP government. Without such a withdrawal by the MLA for Thompson, I would move, seconded by the MLA for Portage, that the matter be referred to a legislative committee for further action. Thank you.